What's that on the screen?
Hi, so in this video, I S rank everything in Sonic Omens, and then after all the S ranks are done, I'm going to discuss the difficulty of reaching every S rank. This is going to be a long one, and it was kind of tough, but sit tight, it'll be fun. Enjoy! So Wellspring is the tutorial level. There's really not much to worry about here. No robots, so no extra bonus to think about. Just the rings, and the time bonus. I'd say the difficulty to get the S rank is 2 out of 10. Maybe 1 out of 10, but I'm going to stick with 2, because it is still possible to struggle with this. Mostly while learning the mechanics, but that's about it. Chao Paradise is the first real level. You have robots, you have hazards, things to worry about. So, even though it's not a hard level, getting the S rank will still take some effort. So I give it a 3 out of 10 for difficulty to get the S rank. Because you're going to have to be actively going after the robots and the rings. Those bonuses really do matter. And they'll matter more later. You'll see. Dragoon E0. Not really a tough fight. Basically, you just have to run around and you'll pretty much avoid all his attacks. And aside from that, to get the S rank, you just have to hit him every chance you get. Later on, he'll start doing 2 or 3 attacks in a row, but keeping your distance should do the trick. I'd say the difficulty to get this S rank is a 2. This level is the first one that I think needs real effort to get the S rank. You have to try to aim for the robots, you have to not miss many rings, and you have to keep up the pace. Since it's a boost game, keeping up the pace shouldn't be too hard, but there are enough tricky hazards, and of course losing your boost. That's going to mess you up a few times if you don't manage it well and keep hitting robots to keep it up. But yeah, you're going to have to keep up your rings and go for all the robots you can, and you should get the S rank. If you do that and it's not working, it's probably your time that's lacking, in which case there are a few shortcuts that can help you. So yeah, difficulty to get the S rank, 2 or 3 out of 10. It's not that bad. Welcome to Wild Ridge, first plane level in the game. Now these are hard to get used to, but they're not that bad once you do get used to it. It just takes a little practice. What you want to focus on is mostly robots in this one. Time too, because it's easy to want to go slow and careful in these levels, or to want to go fast and just mess yourself up by bumping into everything. I don't recommend it. But overall difficulty to reach the S rank, I'd say it's a 4 out of 10, because this level is more straightforward than it looks. It's just getting used to it that's the hard part, that's all. 4 out of 10. Now hopefully you got used to the controls in the last level, because escaping from Gnarl is going to put them to the test. Your instincts, your knowledge. We will be blazing through these red caves, and there will be moving hazards everywhere. So aside from the movement precision that you'll need, you'll still have to keep up with rings. No robots to keep up with though, so mostly the bonuses you'll need are from time and rings. Of course, the second half is the tough part, because that's a boss fight with Gnarl. That's the hard part, so I'd say the difficulty for this one to get the S rank is a 5 or 6. It depends on how good you are with the plane controls and understanding the fight. I say strafe at all times for the fight, because then if you strafe enough, then your dodge will get you out of the hitbox of Gnarl's charge. So yeah, that's about it for this one. 5 out of 10 difficulty, I've decided. White Jungle. This was my first real hurdle in getting S ranks, because there's something about it that feels like it takes more effort than the rest. it's still not something I'm sure I can consistently get the S rank on yet. It's definitely not like the Sonic Adventure 2 version, that's for sure. This one, you probably just have to focus on the robots a lot more. I don't really have any tips besides that. I mean, the level itself is straightforward enough, so you should be able to make the time bonus pretty easily. And the rings are basically in your path at all times. So focus on getting robots, extra robots, even the ones out of your way. I'd say this one is a 6 out of 10 in difficulty to get the S rank. I don't want to do this again. I'll run through it for fun sometimes, but not get the S rank. Time for the big scary tree palace. Now, to get the S rank for this one, again, it's a matter of robots. Always focus on the robots. Although, not so hard that you get out of the time bonus range. You have to keep a balance for everything. Now, a lot of people might be tempted to take shortcuts in this level. I don't really recommend that. I have a speed run of this level on my channel. I'm not sure if it's unlisted, but I skip a lot of robots. I just take the fastest available route. I sound like a GPS. But yeah, I take the fastest route, and it's a great run. I'm very satisfied with it. It just doesn't get you the S rank. I'd say difficulty to get the S rank is 5 out of 10. Maybe 4. It's a very short level, so you don't really have to be afraid of much. Waterfall Chase. This one is so fun, and it's pretty easy to get the S rank, because your main focus is running away from the waterfall. And it's pretty fun. I think I just said that. But, difficulty to get the S rank, 2 out of 10. All you really have to do is avoid hazards, keep your rings. There aren't really any robots to focus on, so that really helps with the difficulty. So, Gun Arsenal. This is probably my favorite Shadow level. It makes such good use of his chaos powers, all 4 of them. And once you get the hang of that, you can make your own shortcuts with it and everything. Anyway, this is about the S rank. I think getting the S rank in this level is actually not that hard at all, especially if you've made use of his chaos powers already. If not, it shouldn't take too much practice. Difficulty to get the S rank, probably 4 out of 10 at most. Moldy Jungle. This is Shadow's first traditional level, and I don't think it's that hard. It's just a little confusing at first. To get the S rank, you're going to have to learn the level first, which in this case is pretty different from traditionally learning levels because of how non-linear it is. Some unorthodox shortcuts and ways of skipping certain things in the level. I'd say the S rank for this one, if you haven't practiced, is probably 6 out of 10. Because it still takes effort, but once you learn the layout of the level, it shouldn't be too hard to really dig in and get those ranks. So, Vortex. This fight is all about your time bonus, because there are no robots, there's not a lot of rings. You just have to be careful and very precise with how you hit him. Like, don't spam the homing attack. You have to take it a little slower than that to give yourself time to dodge the hands, because those hand hitboxes are huge. But in general, this isn't very hard to S rank. Just keep your rings and avoid the attacks. I mean, duh. And that's that. You'll be fine. Difficulty to S rank. Difficulty to S rank. Probably 3. Yeah, I'll stick with 3. time to catch a train. This is where things ramp up. This one's going to be a very solid 8 out of 10 difficulty to get the S rank. Mainly because of the enemy gauntlet and because of the length of the level. Oh, and definitely because of those traps at the end. All those traps. Man, it's tough. I struggle to get this S rank even though I've practiced this level a lot. I love this level. And part of it is because of the difficulty. But doing everything so precisely for so long, because this is like a 5-minute level, it's really hard. Thankfully, if you play as Shadow, you have Chaos Control to make some of the traps easier and the enemy gauntlet. But without Shadow, good luck. Easy 8 out of 10 for Sonic. 5, no, not 5, 7 for Shadow. 7 or 6. It's a tough one, but it's so worth it and it feels great when you get it down. Metal Ember. I really like this fight, and honestly, I wish they didn't nerf it in the last patch. Of course, it's like 2 years late for that. Anyway, about the S rank. You don't really need to do much here. You just need to keep your rings. Honestly, in this fight, since it's a long track, rings are more important than usual. A few robots will help, but they're not required to get the S rank. Definitely not that hard. Once you know what to do and get used to multitasking, it's fine. 5 out of 10 to get the S rank. Welcome to Weeping Rift. I think this level speaks for itself with its infamy. This is the final plane stage. This level made me rip all my hair out. And when I ran out of hair on my scalp, I went for my armpits. And when I ran out of hair on my armpits, you get the idea. This level threw me off a cliff, told me to climb back up so he could throw it off again, and then did so. This level, I think you get the picture. I had to drag my mangled body through this level, this 7-minute level, so many times I lost count. So many things went wrong. Well, no, one thing went wrong several times, and that was, as you could probably guess, the S rank. More specifically, it was depth perception. But once that was solved, I had another hassle, because I was able to reach the end consistently, almost. I was willing and able, and I did it several times. I avoided traps, I avoided geysers, which I really had trouble with early on, again due to depth perception. I shot robots, avoided damage, because avoiding damage is another huge difficulty thing. I did all that, and I kept getting A ranks. I kept getting A ranks, and I don't know why. Well, now I know why, because the video's out, which means I did it. I did it. It took 3,000 years, but I did it. I'm sorry, I'm tired. And you know what? After figuring out the trick, I was more frustrated than before. Well, not with the game, but with myself for not thinking of it earlier. So the trick is the mines. Like, you've heard me say in earlier levels to go for robots and rings, which of course is very important in this one too. Especially this one. Try to line up your ship with rings. But the mines give you a lot of points. Those little glowing spike balls, yeah, the ones on screen right now. I avoided them instead of shooting them. Please, shoot them. They give you lots of points. Lots of points. So if you're able to avoid damage, avoid the geysers, which are instant kills, avoid the lasers, which are also instant kills, avoid that enemy room. Oh my gosh, I forgot to talk about the enemy room. So the enemy room, well, you saw how I handled it in my S rank video. Not video, but earlier in this video, you saw how I handled that. Once you do all that, make sure you shoot a bunch of mines. Then the S rank is yours. I know, that was a lot. I normally, when I'm not going for the S rank, I normally love this level because it's like the Sonic Omens version of the final area of Ori and the Will of the Wisps. And I love that. Adapting a level like that for a game like this, it's so cool. Of course, I recommend that game. Metroidvanias need more and more love. Anyway, S rank difficulty, 8 out of 10. Maybe 9. Yeah, 9 out of 10. I'm gonna go for the full 9. Do not get close to the robots because they will kill you. They will swarm you, they will kill you. Take the tips I gave you into account, and you'll be okay. Of course, it still requires a lot of precision, but honestly, after figuring out the trick, it's fine. 9 out of 10. So, the Maria boss. This one's kind of tricky. The goal is to wait through a few cycles of attacks, and then some robots will show up, some golden robots, and you have to attack those before they disappear. And just like in other boss fights, even though the way you do it is different, the goal is still to avoid taking damage and to attack every chance you get. It's just extra tricky this time because the robots disappear and then you'll have to wait through another cycle of attacks. Overall S rank difficulty, I'd say 5 out of 10. Make sure you zoom your camera out for this one. I keep forgetting to mention the camera zoom out, but you can do that by clicking in the right stick of your controller. As long as you have a wider view, you should be able to lock onto the robots more easily. So, yeah, 5 out of 10 difficulty. Citadel of Lotus. This is the final stage in the game, and it is pretty tough. I definitely remember struggling a lot with it, especially with the hazards towards the middle and the end. A lot of things can go wrong, and you have to be really precise with your platforming, quick with your movement. You'll have to remember your light speed attack, or your powers as Shadow. I'd say the difficulty to S rank this one is 7 out of 10. This one was tough. The Exiled really gave me a run for my money, even after the patch to nerf it, or multiple patches, I'm not sure. But what you want to do for this one is avoid taking damage at all, because taking damage reduces your boost gauge by not 70%, but 70 flat boost. You just lose that amount. And that's the opposite of what you want, since you need your boost gauge to fill before you can go super. Any hit removes that chance in both phases. So that makes this a really tough fight. I'd say difficulty to S rank, 8 out of 10. Still easier than Weeping Rift, but it takes a lot of precision and planning and being very, very careful. Good luck. But that's going to be it for now. Thanks for watching. I will be doing more challenges. This is the year of challenges for me. Maybe not the full year, but as many as I can think of. You'll know if you subscribe to the channel. And maybe even become a member, because some of my longer videos, starting with this one, will be uploaded members only early. So, if you want to be part of the journey of my challenges, that's the way to go. Thanks for watching, and take care of yourselves.